got pumped up with a little intro video, but for those of you that are not, I want to introduce someone who I have a great deal of respect for, a celebrity speaker, amazing person. I'm muting my Facebook Live right now so you don't have to hear that feedback. I'm in it on many levels, folks. Anyway, so celebrity speaker, entrepreneur, a man's owned hundreds of businesses, I believe, and you can correct me on that when we go live. Former CMO of Kodak, which is probably the most important part of this because this is the Kodak story from yellow to red. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce an amazing speaker, a celebrity entrepreneur, and a friend, Mr. Jeffrey Hayzlett. Jeffrey, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks so much for having me and having me a part of this platform and having so many people join us today. I'm live right from Houston, Texas today, where I'm doing an energy event, and I'm glad to be able to join with you today.
Well, thanks for the little plug for GenieCast there, or anyone, anytime, anywhere is true to form, where you can be at an event and giving us just a little bit of a taste here for the next hour of all the amazing things that happen with Kodak. So I'd like to know right off the bat, when we think of disruption, when we think of not keeping up with change, it almost seems like we always defer to Kodak as a corporation. Is it because we're all holding what took them out of business right now? Why is it it's always Kodak?
Well, it's amazing that a company that was one of the three largest patent holders in the world in terms of innovation and change that they had actually failed in the end. In fact, they went bankrupt a couple of years ago, and everybody asked me about the fact that they went bankrupt 2 years ago. I left the company about 7 years ago. And the real thing is they went bankrupt back in 1975. In 1975, a gentleman by the name of Steve Sasson sat in a room and invented the very first digital camera, put digital component parts together, made the very first digital camera. It's a blue box about that big. I know it to be that because it used to sit right on my desk, kind of as a reminder to not just myself, but to anyone that was visiting, of the things that we passed up. They had the only product that people would actually run back into a burning building to save, but yet they made some massive, massive mistakes along the way. And it's usually around the recognition of what might be going, or the mood, or the way in which we try to drive change. And I think that's the biggest mistakes that they had. And then I'll be visiting with you here today, and then sharing that, and hopefully answering some great questions.
1975, they went bankrupt the same year my parents hit the bank and had me. So an interesting little turn there if I'm going to make a narcissistic connection. So I'm going to let you jump into it.
Trump would do it, so why not?
Hey, I'm learning from our fearless leader, and that's where we're going to leave politics with the Facebook Live feed. I think I just hijacked the next hour for whomever wants to comment. Trolls are welcome. Anyway, on that note, I'll let you get to your thing. Why don't you give us a little taste of what happened over at Kodak? And folks, before that happens, just a quick note, go ahead and feel free to put your questions in the chat. If you want to ask a question live, which we encourage, and for those of you in our live virtual audience, there's a little raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to put them in there. And those of you on Facebook Live, throw those comments and questions up there. I'm going to catch as many as I can, and I will address those with Jeffrey when he's done talking through his presentation. So I'm going to read out, and I'm going to let you talk.
All right, great. Thanks so much, man. We'll be back to you in just a few minutes. I'll kind of rev things up and turn on the volume high speed and high and loud. That'd be fantastic. Thanks. So team, what I'll do is just share a few things with you. I'm going to be taking from my book, and my book was Think Big, Act Bigger, where I actually wrote about this. I was actually allowed to finally write about it. I couldn't write about it in the first two books because of all kinds of restrictions. But I want to talk to you a little bit about thinking big and acting bigger, and about how to adapt, change, or die, or what I call being relentless. And I think that's very, very important for us to be thinking about. A moment ago, I mentioned that, Steve Sasson sat in a room and invented this camera. And you can imagine what it was like for him to go from executive to executive, to take this camera and say, look what I've invented, a new way of doing digital photography, a new way of doing the way we capture Kodak moments. And every single executive said, put it away. They said, we're not in that business. We're in the business of building this little yellow box, this little little roll of film. That's what we do. And now we're never in that business. As I mentioned, they had the only product that people would actually run back into a burning building to save. So they were about making moments, when I, make, manage, and move images and information. That's what they were at the core of, whether it was in your business or it was in your personal life, and they forgot that. And so they got into this role of saying, hey, we make this roll of film, this profit margin of 90%. That's what we do. We're a film company. And that was the beginning of the downfall of Kodak. And not to say that they couldn't have turned it around, not to say there weren't great people, but it's the recognition of not being able to understand the business that you're in and to adapt, change, or die. And we're all facing with that right now. So the real key thing for most businesses today is to do what I say, and that is to drive change. And I'm not talking about driving change for change's sake. Nobody says, hey, let's get into the car and lock in the steering wheel, lock in the gas pedal. I'm really talking about driving change, to have a mood of saying, I'm going to continue to drive change in the business, no matter how small your business is or how big your business is. That's really what we want to be able to have you focus on. And if you can do that, you really make some massive leaps forward in the business that you're trying to do. So for all of us, it's a way for us to start to think big, act bigger. Jim Collins writes about this in his book about the hubris of success. And if you think about it, that's where they were at that fifth stage of the hubris of success, right at the brink of disaster, and then step back, although they went over it a couple more times. The things that happened to Kodak weren't always their fault, right? Because things changed. If we think about the way we do photography today, we do photographs and so forth, I don't think it was because Kodak said, oh, we're just going to do it this way, and because of that, we're going to lose everything. It was just the fail to recognize that they could do things. So one of the biggest things when I stepped on board as a CMO of Kodak, I was so excited to go to work for the company. I mean, I couldn't wait. I was going to be at a Fortune 100, an officer of a Fortune 100 company, which when you think about it is massive because there's only like 5 or 6 officers per company. That's 500 officers worldwide. If you take a Fortune 1000, you can think of it that way. There's 5,000 more people playing professional football. So this is like hitting the big leagues. I couldn't wait to go to work. I actually showed up a week early. And before I passed the urine test or anything, I jumped on a plane and flew to Rochester before they announced me and everything, just to be there because I was so excited to go to work there and be a part of this. I mean, one of the most iconic brands in the world, one of the most truly up until that point successful companies, and they had more market cap than Apple did, in its heyday right now. So when you think about just the iconicness of the company, and as a marketer for me, becoming the chief marketing officer of a company like that, I couldn't wait. Now, I jumped on a plane, by the way. I was so excited to tell you this little story. As I was flying there, I'm sitting talking to this 24, 25-year-old gal, and I'm trying to get her to ask me what I do because I'm pretty excited about the fact that I'm the chief marketing officer of a Fortune 100 company. And she starts talking about herself. When she gets done with that, she turns to me and says, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm the chief marketing officer of the Eastman Kodak Company. And she said, who's that? It was there I started to have the real realizations of how big this job was going to be. Now, one of the things I think is important for us to think about is what I would call, real quickly, a way to be able to test the team. And I call this clock changers. That we're looking for clock changers in the organization. So one of the things that I did was organize meetings with a lot of the team to try to get a mesh for what the team was, who they were, what they were doing, go over the 90-day plan, figure out what was going on, what was in the budgets, what wasn't, because I was having to take out millions and millions and millions of dollars of cost. Well, what I did was I got to the meeting a little bit early. By getting there a little early, and there was a clock on the wall. And so I stood up on the chair and I moved the clock ahead by about 20 minutes because I wanted to test the mettle of the team. Just little things like this to find out, why we were failing. Just little things to see what the mood of the company was and what the people were like. And so they'd walk in, they'd look at the clock, and they noticed the clock was off by about 20 minutes, and they said, the clock's wrong. Well, they'd look at their watch, they'd look at their phone, and then they'd turn to the person next to them and say, hey, the clock's wrong. What time you got? What time you got? What time you got? And then they'd start, bitching and moaning, complaining about the fact that things don't get fixed and that it's off and someone should do something about it. And pretty soon they're trying to form little committees to get the clocks to work right. And then they mentioned that the clock was off in this building and this building and this building. And finally, I just said, keep moving through, move. We got to go. And so this went on for a couple of weeks, by the way. And so finally, after a couple of weeks, they were giving me status reports on who they had called and so forth. I said, why doesn't someone just do something? And a woman got up and she went over to the clock and she moved a chair under the clock, hiked up her dress, stood on the chair, and then just changed the clock. And I named her my chief of staff later that week. She's running $1 billion company today. But it gives you the mindset of how we get locked into the ways in which we're supposed to do things. The fact that these guys operated like this. When I got there was executive dining rooms, rather than executives sitting with all the employees. There was lots of different things that were holdovers from old times because that's the way they did things. Rather than looking at it in a different way and saying, hey, look, we need to change the clock, And that's what leaders are looking for, are clock changers, all right? And with that, you have to have a way for people to get permission. Now, in my book, the Think Big, Act Bigger, I talk about the Catlin rule. Okay, write this down because this is the very first story I put in the book. And one of the things I really talk about from the stage that's a kind of a different mindset, the Catlin rule. What's the Catlin rule? Very clearly, it's something that I kind of came up with. I had an employee who was working for me at one time, and her name was Caitlin. She had just come to work for me. This is just about 2 or 3 years ago. And we have a company called Tallgrass, a company that we own called Tallgrass, which stands for, if you want to run with the big dogs, you got to learn to pee in the tall grass, okay? And they do social media and public relations. Well, Caitlin was a young gal that worked for us, and we're about to go meet with the CEO that actually is about to take his company public. And so when we take a company public, we go meet with them, talk about the strategy, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how we're going to blow them up, how we're going to make them bigger. And in that conversation, she turned to me and she said, Mr. Hayzlett, should we take color copies of the presentation? I said, Caitlin, you're new here, so you probably don't know all the rules. And one of the rules is you only get to ask me 21 questions. I said, I just made that up. In fact, I'm calling that the Caitlin rule from now on. You get to ask me 21 questions during the month. You can ask me any question you want as a new employee. You can ask me about the meaning of life. Does this dress make me look great? Where's the best Italian restaurant? What's the best way to get across town in New York City by subway? Blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Is that one of your frickin' 21 questions? And she turned to me and said, I don't think so. And I turned to her and I said, good career move. Because if I have to answer that question, what do I need you for? Okay? See, what happens in bigger companies like Kodak, they get so rigid in the way in which you can do things. And in a lot of other companies, we don't give people permission to go and make their own rules or to operate inside what we call mutual conditions of satisfaction. And that was a great thing for Kodak. Everybody at Kodak, and one of the biggest mistakes is that it would take months and months and months and sometimes even years for us to implement a product change, implement a change in the system or the way that we do it. But yet the writing was on the wall that it was so simple. All someone had to do was make a decision and get it done. So more people were asking for permission than asking for forgiveness. Now, not that we want to have people run amok, because nobody wants that, but to be able to treat people like adults inside of either a big company or small company and make the decisions. And so that's the Caitlin rule. That's the rule that I think is important. The other thing that I think that we saw a great deal inside of a Kodak, and we see this in lots of other companies, is the ability to say to people to fail fast, okay? Look, failing sucks, but what we have to do is understand that in big companies or in small companies, we're always going to fail. That's what innovation is about. You know, it's about making decisions and making changes and taking action, and all the way along, we're going to make mistakes. Now, the key is to make them as fast as possible. Not only just fail fast, but failing's for losers. What you want to do is win fast. And so how can you create a culture inside the company and a method and a management style that says, go, 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 and understand that you're going to fail along the way many, many times. But it's okay because you're leading to a win. And the more you fail, the more you win. The more you change, the more you adapt, the more you go with speed, the greater it is. And that's the game that we're playing today in every single company. So what can you do to make that happen? So let me talk to you about a couple of reasons why I think companies like Kodak fail in some of the fundamental things that we see. Number one, creating tension. We're afraid of tension. Kodak was one of those companies where you just didn't rock the boat. You didn't want to push anyone or make any waves. And because of that, everything's the same. There's a Kodak way. There's a Coca-Cola way. I can name all these big companies. There's always this way. Now, some of that's good if it's driving the objectives of the company. If it's not, it's a bad thing. So for all of us in leadership, we have to learn to create tension, to take everybody from the center of the stage and move them to the edge where they almost fall off. Now, it's got a lot of tension with it. It's got a lot of risk with it. It's a scary kind of thing. And you're going to have people in your organization that are going to want to drag you back to the middle where it's nice and safe. And you know who those people are? HR, okay? Legal, those sneaky little bastards, right? Sorry for all those people that are listening. I just got a ding from HR right there. But that's okay because, see, I'm creating tension. And what you want to do is have good, healthy debate to talk about the things you could do. And I used to get in trouble all the time. You could probably imagine in a big corporation, I was always getting called into someone's office, almost like the principal, because I was creating tension wherever I was going. You know, I'd run around with a pair of scissors threatening to cut everybody's name badges that had the old logos on them. Okay. And then, of course, I got in trouble for that because the word got out I was cutting up people's name badges. Now, I just threatened to cut up people's name badges. I never actually cut anyone's name badge, but I got in trouble for that. Of course, I had to convince them that I never cut a badge. I just threatened to cut people's badges. See, to cause debate, to cause healthy tension is good. In sports, they have a saying, and see if any of you guys can kind of listen when I say this: no pain, no gain. Yeah, I'm watching a few of your mouths move right there. No pain, no gain. Then why don't we have tension in business? Got it? So that's one of the big failures that really help Kodak to fail, if you want to say help to fail or cause them to fail, was the fact that tension wasn't a part. And so we really tried to instill, when the new leadership showed up there, you know, in 2000 and 2006, was to create a lot of tension. Unfortunately, we didn't have the runway to keep it going that we would have liked when we hit that economic downturn in 2008, and it really caused more havoc. Okay, now here's another one that I want to talk to you about. I think it's real critical. And I'm going to speak for another 5 or 10 minutes here, and then we'll open it up for questions because I really love to get into your questions and get into it. I think that's one of the unique things here about GenieCast. And I really, truly love this platform is the interactivity that you get in terms of sharing the information and then being able to have great discussion, which I think is a great learning tool. So now what I want to do is talk to you about what I call radical transparency. Now, I'm going to give you an example of another company because I think it's real critical here because it's one that's really current and you've seen it before. So what do I mean by radical transparency? Now, we've all gone to these meetings. When we go to these meetings, we walk into a conference room. You know that I'm talking about? One of these big fancy conference rooms. We're in there for some big meeting and we all see something that's not going on right. It's not correct. It's not politically kosher or whatever it might be, or we see a blatant mistake that's about to occur, but no one says anything. No one talks about the elephant in the room. Shame on you. Okay? And Kodak would do these constant. I can point to big, huge, hairy, big, badass mistakes I made, millions of dollars of mistakes. I wish I didn't, but I did because I thought it was a great idea, and then no one told me the obvious outcome that would have occurred had I thought it through better or had more experience. But because I was the boss, they let me make the big, huge mistakes. Wow. Talk about the elephant in the room. We need radical transparency. Let me give you a great example. I'm watching TV one night, and on TV comes this great commercial that says our pizza sucks. All right, remember this commercial? Everybody remember which one this is? For Domino's. So they said our pizza tastes like cardboard. I'm thinking, who spends money saying our pizza sucks? That spends money to say that they suck, their product sucks, and it's just terrible, and you should go try them again. And then what was the conversation around the boardroom? Well, so my television show, the C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett, that's on C-Suite TV, used to be on Bloomberg as well. I like to see things like that, and I go, what happened inside that boardroom that would cause that kind of discussion? And I like to take people inside the boardrooms or in the C-suite where 99% of the people
many of you guys who are on this call don't always get to go. And what was the conversation? Imagine that. They're all talking about how great it is, and all of a sudden someone raises their hand and goes, no, hey, we suck. In fact, we suck so much, we should change the name of the company from Domino's Pizza to Domino's to more reflect that we do more than just pizza. And we should change the recipe of our pizza because it tastes like cardboard. And let me see if you got this right, Mr. Chairman. You agreed with, the CMO's decision and his comment in that meeting, and you agreed to spend $10 million to retool the pizza, $80 million to go out and advertise and tell people that you suck. You're basically changing the brand promise of the company. And of course, he argued with me and said, no, we're not changing the brand promise. Yes, you are. But what is the brand promise of Domino's? We all know this. 30 minutes or it's free. Free, exactly. Thank you. Basically, they cared more about getting us the box than what was in the box itself, right? That was the brand promise. I mean, come on, think about it. Now, I'm going to make eye contact with me here because I'm watching you on video. How many of you go home at night or did, and you called Domino's, right? And you ordered pizza, okay? And what was the first thing you did when you hung up the phone? You looked at your watch. Why? Hoping you were going to get a free shitty pizza. That was basically the brand promise of the company, right? You hope that you got crappy service so that you would get a crappy pizza. And we were willing to play the lottery to try to get it. That was the brand promise. But they changed that by saying we're going to make better ingredients, we're going to do it differently, and we're going to tell you that this is what we're doing, and we're going to make it better. Phenomenal. What was the result? Their stock went from 70 cents to over $70. They almost ran out of pepperoni, and they're doing it again. In fact, I'm going to grab the device. They're doing it. They're doing it right now with the phone. Have you seen what they're doing now? You talk about saying, look, we're going to look outside. We're going to think about radical transparency. We're going to change it, and here's what we're going to do. They're doing it with the phone. They're saying right now, if you call us, we're going to screw the order up. We can't even speak English. Don't even give us the order. We're going to mess it up. But if you get on the app and you fill it out and you make a mistake, it's your fault, right? But what's more brilliant about that is the fact that these guys are taking $1.15 out of the cost of delivery of the pizza. When you look on a $7 pizza, phenomenal margins. Okay? Radical transparency. Great teams, when you look at sports teams, have an unbelievable transparency. So at a company like Kodak, we didn't have the transparency. One group was afraid to talk to the other. One group didn't want to tell the other one that was making mistakes. And therefore, they made constant mistakes that led to the downfall because no one would talk about the elephant in the room. Okay? So a big, huge blunder on the part of Kodak in making that happen. And it's just something that you really have to kind of keep straightforward as you start to think about it. So with that, man, I can continue to go on and on and on with some other great examples. But what I want to do is get into your questions and be able to answer the things that are more important to you, and then give you some more examples that I can share from my experience of being at one of the most iconic companies that went from yellow to red.
Wow, this is great stuff. I have some questions, but I actually have a question from the audience. I was going to touch on the fact with radical transparency. I don't know if I should be sharing that I do most of these in my boxer shorts, but regardless, I think that Benjamin Fox has a better input and a better question. So, Brad, if you would unmute Benjamin, we'd like to bring him on the screen and see if he can ask a question to Jeffrey.
Yeah, hey, Jeffrey. Really interesting presentation. You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So actually, I did my MBA, and of course, there was always the Kodak case study. So it was very interesting to hear your perspective from the inside. So thank you for that. My question is, that was kind of on one end of the spectrum, and one of our new clients is on the other end of the spectrum, I would say, of what you're talking about, which is Amazon. And they seem to just have a go at everything and everybody, and nothing is sacred, and their culture is kind of aggressive and very transparent. And I'm curious to know, is there a happy medium, or is that where we're headed? Is that where corporate cultures need to be to keep up these days, or is there a middle ground?
I think you have to have the culture that's right for you, whatever that is. To me, the Amazon culture is a little bit more predatory than I would typically like to have, So I don't know that I would, and you hear a lot of complaints about people who actually work there, but at the same time, let's be clear, there's lots of people who love to work there.
Sure.
But it's really about the values that you have as your own company and the way in which you want to set forward in terms of how are we going to operate. I call these conditions of satisfaction. What are the things that you are trying to drive as a leader in the company? And then what are the values that you're trying to espouse as a company? I think are very critical. You know, Bezos, Jeff is a great guy. He has a different kind of approach with that. Okay. Yeah. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. It's his approach. It's his company. Right. So although it's owned to the shareholders, you know, I would typically say with Amazon, although I think a lot of the stuff they pursue is awesome, but I also think they're everywhere and they're still not making money yet. So from that perspective, if I, you know, wanted to really, one of my objectives was to make money, to be a profitable company, then I might want to think back how I would trim some of that back, that you would make decisions and not try everything, right? As opposed to a Google, which is making great money and they try everything. And many of the things that they try don't fail, but they have enough money to be able to afford it, right? So there's a lot of that you can take a look at, and you can say the same thing with Apple. So I think like on most things, when you look at it, it's a seesaw. If you push on one end, something's got to give on the other, right? So to me, I've always found balance to be a pretty important thing. You just got to find what's the right balance for you.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. That was a great question too.
Thank you.
And I wish Kodak wasn't always the bad example, because I got to tell you, you know, Benjamin, because it's a great question. There's a lot of great things that Kodak did. I mean, think of all the inventions and things that we have in this world as a result of Kodak, without question. You know, as I mentioned, you know, 28,000 patents, one of the third largest patent holders in the world. You know, they invented stuff that most people don't think. And every single one of these phones that we're all picking up, Kodak's inside of that. In this laptop, Kodak's inside of that. They're all right there in terms of making. Sorry about that. If you can hear that, my wife is trying to call me. We just had a grandbaby, so she's constantly feeding me pictures. And even though I say don't call me, I'm getting calls from my wife.
Talk about a Kodak moment, if I ever heard of one. Yeah. Quite fitting. And Ben, thank you so much. Or Benjamin, I don't know which one you prefer. So Benjamin, thank you so much for that question. We have a question here from Jordan. So if Brad, my producer, would let Jordan up on. Jordan, you're live. Let's hear what you got to ask Jeffrey.
I'm a little nervous. I just joined you.
Hey, Jordan, how you doing? I know who Jordan is. Good to see you, Jordan. Happy birthday. Jordan had a birthday not too long ago.
Wow.
Thanks, Jeffrey. In regards to Amazon, there were news reports saying that there are ideas that going to be an actual store for Amazon. And I wanted your input on that, because personally I prefer online, because there were many downsides to being a physical store. So I wanted your input on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a natural progression for them in terms of being able to have the distribution. If you look in the business of what Amazon's about, it's really truly about distribution, about disseminating information, disseminating products, right? So where you want to order everything online, you know, sometimes you need a gallon of milk. And so you got to go somewhere to go get the gallon of milk. We're not going to ship you a gallon of milk over the, you know, you're not going to wait for it for a day or two. You need it now. You want it now. And so therefore there's going to be some of those items. I think what you'll find, it's going to be very unique, that Amazon will use its predictive behaviors and their predictability of managing that workflow, managing the logistics of their products, and they'll find those things that are the most special, the most ordered, the ones that people need the most. It's going to be kind of an interesting. So it's kind of going to be a cross between. I don't know if you guys have ever remember, there was a book years and years ago about called what was the name of that book? When he was about Stu Leonard's, which is a place outside of in Connecticut, Westport, Connecticut, and it's a grocery store, and they have the best of everything, and they continually change their inventory based upon what the customers want. And I think you'll see that from Amazon. Now, whether it's the smart move, because you're watching retailer after retailer get out of the business, but I think a small footprint frequently, placed in right kinds of places is probably going to be a smart idea for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Jordan, thank you so much for the question. Great question, by the way. This next question, I know this person because he signs my paycheck. And so I have to always bump him in ahead of the line if he has one. But Keith Alper would like to welcome you to the screen if you got a question for Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeffrey. Thanks for being with us today. Good stuff. A few things. I need to defend Amazon because they're a client, and they're disrupting the movie business. They're disrupting the grocery business, and Walmart's a client too. And so it's interesting to see how people are. So if you could share with us, because, if you go down disruption, you can see, the movie studios missed YouTube and Netflix, and Kodak missed the digital camera. You keep on going down of all the disruption. And I think part of it is because people are trying to make their quarter or their year and they don't want to invest in the future. But who's your favorite company that's disrupting right now? Is there a company you've seen or you're looking at that we should keep our eye on to learn from, and hopefully not the obvious ones, but, just as you're out there seeing people and talking to other CMOs in the world, who's someone that you like that's doing a great job in disruption and innovation?
Yeah, Keith, I think thanks very much for having me. And by the way, have I told you how great Doug is doing? I just want to point that out.
Well, Doug and I go to the same barber, so we like each other.
Yeah, the companies that I typically find are a little bit smaller and a little bit more fleet of foot. But at the same time, you look at some of the bigger ones. Let's take Uber. I think Uber is a perfect example. And Airbnb is another example. If I would have told you 10 years ago that some night at 2 o'clock in the morning, you've had a few drinks and you're going to get in the car of someone you don't know, okay, and they're going to take you somewhere, you would have thought I was nuts. Or that 10 years ago, I would have told you you're going to take your extra bedroom or your house and you're going to let someone sleep naked in your house, okay? These are things that I think are just like, wow, we've changed the way that we've done it. Now, on top of that, there are companies that I think are just doing a fantastic job, like TriNet expenses, and the way in which we capture expenses. We're doing different things. I think there's so much that's innovative in the software side that's just changing the way that we operate, and where words start to become verbs for us or nouns for us. I'm going to take an Uber. I'm going to take a Lyft. And I think we haven't seen the extent of this innovation from various companies. And, a company like Uber, it's amazing because it got started because 3 guys were out drinking in Paris one night and couldn't get a cab. And so therefore they think of it, and then boom, look what they've created. So I'm watching, companies like that. But at the same time, I go and watch a company like, it's a bizarre company, but it's Scotty Vest, tech-enabled clothing. Scott Jordan, he's doing about $60 million a year. He makes a travel shirt. I'm wearing one of them now. He makes a travel vest, and he's made pockets. He's actually invented pockets, certain kinds of pockets that you can put in the clothing. I mean, it's so bizarre, but yet so innovative. And who would have thought that? And most people would have thought he's freaking crazy, which he is freaking crazy, but here's an innovative way of being able to do it. So most of the time, I think that the most innovative companies are just the ones that just go and do it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. By the way, Keith, I'll add this. I have a saying in my office in Sioux Falls. I have offices in New York, LA, San Francisco, Sioux Falls, Seattle. And in my office in Sioux Falls, people always say, why do you have an office in Sioux Falls? And I say, because we can. And I think that's a good way of us being able to say that for a lot of companies is, why do we do GenieCast? Because we can. Why do we do this? Because we can. And I think that's a great mantra to live by.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Jeffrey, for the plug. Check is in the mail. On that note, though, Uber came up, and it would be wrong for me as a moderator not to mention this. It was only a few days ago, but considering the trouble Travis got in with that recording and everything, I'm curious, when you look at a company that's innovating, a company that, everybody's the Uber of everything because of that innovation, because of that scalability. What happens when a company like that, and I'm not saying this is particularly the situation, but it could be, fails to innovate once they blow up? Are we at a point right now where he's disrupting himself?
I don't think he'll stay on as a CEO very much longer, to be honest with you. And I don't think he should. I think for the best interest of the company, we've seen that his behavior and his actions have gotten in the way of running the company. And that happens from time to time. I remember there was a CEO at Groupon who did something very similar. I think it was Groupon. Hopefully that's the right company, but where someone actually.
I don't think they're a client, so go ahead.
It's okay. Well, regardless of whether they're a client or not, the actions are actions, and truths are truths, and opinions are opinions. It doesn't mean they're right or they're wrong.
It's just a way for us to have a good discussion. And by the way, good discussion. If Travis were here, I'd have the same discussion with Travis. Like, you know, and there are times when I'm running my own companies and I get in the way of running my own company. And the key thing is the realization of when you, as a leader, you're in the middle of disrupting your company, but you're in the middle of allowing it to be at the scale that it needs to have the breakthroughs it needs to have, because either you're not living the principles of the company or you're the bottleneck on the company. So those are things that you have to kind of go through. And I think that's one they're going to have to examine over time. Let's be clear too. There's a lot of progression we got a number of small companies on here as well, of when you start off as an entrepreneur, you start off as a one-man band or you know, a few people who get together and say, man, this is a great idea. Let's build this company. And then you add what we call devout followers. These aren't people who are necessarily the right people for the jobs, but they're there when I got it started. And here's Susie. Susie's doing this. Now she does this. Now she does this. I go through this on companies that I've bought and sold. I've bought and sold over 250 companies in my career. And then you make the next transition, which is to this where you need skilled professionals and executives to a certain extent, you know, that high level. And not every leader can excel to become the CEO of their company to the next level. And sometimes they have to bring in others. And you've seen that over the years where even Steve Jobs had to do that. And numerous other companies where they have to step aside and let somebody else run the company that's going to do a better job.
Amazing. So what would you say is the single biggest thing for a CEO then to focus on in this disruption phase with everything you're touching? Is that it?
You just said the word focus. I think it's focus. So it's and along with, look, the one of the best things a leader can do is I don't know what I don't know. So it's to be in a constant state of awareness, because it's when we get into the hubris of success of saying this is how we do it and this is the way in which we do it. It's that you can say that amongst the values and the principles of the company, but not in the processes. And so one is to be aware of what I'm not aware of, but then the next thing is to be focused on maniacally those things that are those conditions of satisfaction. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, use a number more than 5, that lead us to the success of our company. And are you focused on that and put everything outside out of that, because that's got to be the focus. I call it in my book, Think Big, Act Bigger, I call it killing squirrels. Because if you remember the movie Up, there was the old man character and a young scout went on an adventure to Paradise Falls, and they ran into Doug the talking dog. Well, Doug ran up to them and said, I got a collar that my evil owner's given me, and you can hear my innermost thoughts. I think you smell like vanilla. You seem very nice. And then the dog would say, squirrel. And so he got distracted. So that's what happens in a lot of companies. We get distracted by projects. We get distracted by trivial items. We get distracted by issues that aren't related to those key things that we should be focusing on. And that's usually a big failure for a lot of companies.
So on that note, I'll thank you as well, because there's probably several desks at GenieCast that just slacked one another saying, oh my God, Doug the talking dog, which is probably perfect because I chase squirrels all day. So thanks for that note.
I didn't mean to make that personal reference there.
I've had worse nicknames. Anyway, to that, and folks, I can talk with Jeffrey all day. We certainly can go back and forth. If you have questions, use the chat. I'll ask them for you. If you want to come on screen, obviously you see how to do that. Just raise hand feature. And I'm keeping an eye on the Facebook Live, which has some great comments, but no questions. So if you want to put any in there, feel free to do so. But Jeffrey, I'm also curious, and this is just more about Kodak in general. I mean, you were there during some turbulent and trying times, but what do you miss the most of that CMO lifestyle? And I've heard you talk about this before, that the radical change of how the treatment and everything. I know the bathroom story, things that you might want to touch on, which I love. But what do you miss the most, and what is that great contrast between that major C-suite and running your own businesses and being more entrepreneurial?
Yeah,
so two questions.
Yeah, there's a few things I miss. And the first, I always tell people I miss the plane. I miss the private jets, but nonetheless, that's always kind of a cool thing. But I always miss the people. So no matter what place, you can imagine this was a company filled with people who really cared and who really wanted to succeed. But it was almost as though we were stuck in a time warp. And it was that time warp that was causing all those issues. And so the mood is a bad thing, because what happens is you can have the greatest culture in the world, but have a bad mood and you can't move it forward. Man, imagine going to a great restaurant, 5-star restaurant, but everybody's really pissy about, working there. Well, then you don't have a great experience. But how many times have you gone to kind of a crappy restaurant? It's not the best restaurant, but everybody's having fun. And it's worth it. It's fun to go. I mean, who wants, like a sports bar or something like that? It's not the best food in the world. Come on. But you're having a great time and you're enjoying it with your friends. And so therefore it's a great experience. And so for Kodak, for a lot of people, they actually believe their best times were behind them. And so they would say, make it like it used to be. Rather, and I look at it and say, hey, look, I don't look like I used to when I was 20. I look better today. Right. And it's that attitude, it's that mood of saying I can make it better and I can be better and I can improve. And so therefore it's real critical to have that mood. Mood is everything in a business. A culture is something that takes time to develop over a long period of time. But when you say, hey, what do you miss the most? I always miss in each and every situation, because I'm the kind of guy you typically have brought in to make those changes and do it quickly, and then I move on. That's just the nature of I have a short attention span. And Kodak was the longest I'd ever spent in any given company, 4 years. So that was the longest. Although now I'm doing it for my own company, the C-Suite Network and C-Suite TV, C-Suite Radio. But I'm inventing things every day. So creating new television shows, new radio shows, new content, and working with partners like GenieCast and many others. So to me, it's exciting. So every day is exciting. So I don't have to worry about that because I'm creating a new business almost every day. So I think that's a real problem for a lot of people is to change the mood, because culture is something you build over time. Culture is Keith, it's you, it's me, it's all the different, it's Bradley, it's Ben, and all the other people that make up part of the company, and that becomes our culture, because I am Kodak, you're Kodak, and so forth. But it's that mood. If you have a great mood, you can do anything. If you have a shitty mood, you will fail.
Mood. All right. So I have a question messaged to me from Katie, and then Jordan will bring back up, has another question. Katie wanted to know, what was your biggest win and biggest loss while you were at Kodak?
Well, the biggest I had a lot of losses. I mean, you typically do. And I got to tell you, I don't remember them as much, because to me, I don't dwell on them. I never dwell on losses. And the loss was I wasn't able to turn it around. Okay. I mean, if I think about that, that's the thing. I wasn't able to get everything. And it was, you got to imagine it was like running up against a brick wall every freaking day, every day. But at the same time, that's exhilarating and fun because I like knocking down things and building things and doing things. So, but the losses, Katie, I appreciate it. I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but I'm also one of those people like, well, it's a loss, big deal, move on and build to the things I'm supposed to be building, because I do that. So, the biggest win I probably had that I really thought that we did the best was the stuff that we did with the Celebrity Apprentice, in launching the new products, the inkjet products. I sold product, and another one that I did that I thought was one of the biggest wins was we sold $400 million of a product just using Twitter, and no advertising, just using a Twitter. We did a contest. We basically did a contest where we said to people, give us the name of the product. We held a contest on it. We put it together in days. And if you named the product, we put your picture on the box, of you on the box of the camera, depending on what you looked like. We might have put you in the box. So if you weren't as good looking as we thought you should be, let's be honest, we're in the photography business. So, but that was another product that we did, and it was just awesome. And that was the flip, I called it a flip killer, and we had a video camera, the ZX3, ZX8, and what was called the Play Sport camera, waterproof video camera, which is the predecessors of what you see with the GoPros today.
So how much did you say you did on Twitter?
We sold $400 million worth of a product on Twitter, and we used nothing on advertising. Yeah,
I don't even think Twitter can sell $400 million of Twitter.
You know what? I tend to agree with you, and we were really good. We had one of the best social media teams, and still today, there's some social media geniuses out there. Jenny, Mary. Oh my gosh, I'm going to leave out so many names. But I named the very first chief blogger. I named the very first chief listening officer ever. When people thought that was a gimmick, and it wasn't a gimmick, it was to, like using Twitter, for instance, is a way to listen to your customers, to truly listen. I call it return on ignoring, not the ROI, return on ignoring. And to listen to customers, and they would actually tell you what they want. And then you could go back and then go to the product teams and say, hey, add a microphone jack, add this, add that. And, don't spend 5 months figuring it out. Just add it because it's only $2 or whatever it costs us. And by doing that, that allowed us to innovate a lot faster and a lot quicker. And so it was using different tools than what we normally had. We used to have a research panel that we spent $80 to $150 million a year just eliciting response back. But yet we had Twitter, now we have Facebook, we had LinkedIn. What a much cheaper way of doing it, and take that money and put it towards the marketing and do it the other thing. The other win, Katie, if I may, is that I had was when I got there, 70 or 80% of the money that was spent was what was called below the line. What I mean by below the line, that means it was in overhead. And above the line is the marketing or direct expense that's spent for advertising or promotion of the product. And by the time I left, I had 76% above the line. So I spent 4 years trimming, pushing, shoving, changing the programs to get most of the money outbound, and as opposed to inbound and in overhead. And I took a lot of great pride in that. And, I took a lot of heat for it, and some people said I spent money that I shouldn't have done. And some people, argue with me and so forth, but that's you mentioned trolls earlier. I had a lot of trolls, and that's okay. If you're not being if you don't have trolls, if you don't have criticism, if you don't have people yelling at you, you're not causing tension. You're not driving the innovation, and that's a big part of it.
Haters just validate that you're doing something right.
Yeah, Jay Baer's got a great book out, Love Your Haters, and that's a great thing. Look, I used to do all kinds of things. I mean, I remember one time I tweeted out to somebody that was really critical of us once. I sent a tweet out that said, "Bite me." And of course, the corporate people come up to me and said, "You got to be nicer." So then I wrote, "Please bite me."
All right. On that note, and Joni, I see you've got a question here, but I wanted to call Jordan up. Jordan, you're going live for a second time.
Oh, am I live now?
Jordan, start over for me, please. You jumped on your mute, just so we jumped on your mute. So go right ahead.
Good to see you again, Jeffrey. My question was, what is your deepest inspiration like in terms of the content you create on a daily basis? What is your deepest inspiration like?
My deepest what?
Inspiration.
Inspiration. It's the people that I surround myself with. I try. One of the slides that I didn't get to is to be authentic. The one cool thing about Kodak, it was authentic. Even if it was wrong, it was authentic, okay? It believed what it was doing. It was drinking the Kool-Aid or drinking the champagne, depending on what you want to say. But the inspiration I find every single day for the things I do is in the comments I get back from people, friends that I meet, and people that you're changing people's lives or doing things that are helpful for them in some way, shape, or form. And if that also meets my needs, my things, awesome. And if it doesn't, I'm okay with that too. So
that's, thank you, Jordan. That's a really good question, and actually gets my brain spinning around this. And Joni, I still got your question here, but I'm obsessed with this authenticity versus honesty thing, because I feel that people think transparency or honesty is authenticity. But I mean, I'm curious, when you say being authentic, do we really get into the guts of doing things you believe are right and staying clear, or is it just about being blunt and putting it out there? I mean, how deep does it get?
No, I mean, I think you should be polite. I don't think you should do it to the point of harming or hurting others.
Sure.
And I think some people do take it that way. I think there needs to be some common decency of the things in which you would say or how you would say them. And quite frankly, there's not everything I need to share or want to share or do or should share, because it's none of your freaking business, So those are the rules you kind of have to put around that. And just because I'm sharing doesn't mean anyone wants to listen. So you really have to get to what is it you're trying to do, especially for somebody like myself or others, who use this platform like GenieCast or others to build a community, build thought. And it's really around, serving a need. And I think you have to really tie it to that.
I've got Joni's question right here, which would be, speaking of digital, the role of CMOs have changed. Can you please give us your thoughts on the modern needs / CMO?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joni. It has changed. It used to be that CMOs had, up until a few years ago, the CMO is the chief advertising officer, the chief brand officer, if you want to call it. Brand being, really truly about a promise delivered. And it's changed. Most CMOs today are coming from the business. They're not coming from the brand side. They're really truly not coming from the creative side. And so the day of a chief marketing officer being the chief advertising officer are dead. They're over. And digital is driven a great deal of that. So really the CMO is a business person who's responsible for the creation of the idea all the way through customer satisfaction. And that's the role of a CMO. Not to put together pretty campaigns and run the communications. That's one component of it, but the creation of the idea all the way through customer satisfaction. That's the definition of what I would consider a modern day marketer. And with a maniacal attention to return on investment. Because, we used to be able to throw a lot of money, and we're changing the way that's done. And, it's really, truly changing how we perceive. So the other piece of it is we're not throwing money there, but the money that we should be chasing or spending is in the building of our tribes and the building of our communities, because that's where we need to be focused a little bit more in terms of the relationship and the experience with that customer. So that's how it's changing.
Love it. Love it. So this next question is coming from our Facebook live feed. And then it looks like, I believe Ben's got his hand up again, so I can certainly bring Ben back up live. But Jim wants to know on Facebook, based on today's, and this is a little bit of what you just answered, but then some, based on today's generation and their use of technology, do you see disruption being pushed more at the mid-level management versus the C-level in today's business environment? And how do you see the CMO positioning transforming, which we just touched on? In many businesses, has been becoming a CIO, CTO, CDO role.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with the fact that it's becoming more of a CTO, CIO role. Someone who spoke up at a conference one time and said relationship is now the new word. When did it stop being? Okay, look, we all want to have a relationship with a brand, with customer service, with people, with so forth. We all want that, the experience. So I really want to get back through, please believe me, in a lot of experience here. Not that I know everything, but I'm a real studier on the marketing side and the transition, because I was doing this kinds of transition when nobody was thinking about it. And it's really that customer, the inception of the idea all the way through the customer, satisfaction on this end. So it's truly the experience, and that, that's a big thing. And I don't think the CIOs can bring that. I don't think that's their role, nor do I think that's the role of the chief technology officer. Where do I see the squeeze? I won't say it's a squeeze on any particular group. I think it's a state of mind. Let me give you a good example. I'm a millennial. Yeah. See, I'm just trapped in an old guy's body, okay? And to me, it's a state of mind. It's the way in which we operate. And so it's really the thing that will get squeezed is behavior, or the failure to capture the behavior. And I think that's where it's at. So if mid-management doesn't get it, if the CMO doesn't get it, they will be gone. They will be history. They will be dead, because you can't live with that in today's fast-moving economy. I mean, just the way that we, if we think, let's get on the phone and dial more phones because that's going to make the sales happen. Well, people don't react like that. When was the last time you took a phone call? When was the last time you made cold calls? It just doesn't happen like that. The funnel operates differently today, and so you have to have a realization of that and how to work with it.
Fantastic. So last question, I believe, because we're getting close on time. This went fast, which is always a good sign when it goes fast. So I wanted to bring Benjamin back up. He seems to have another question and might want to just defend some of his clients again. So Ben, you're ready.
Now, I just kind of had, to be honest, a bit of a self-serving question. I sell events to marketing professionals predominantly, and I'm curious if you have any advice on a best way to approach a CMO level type person on, I know that's only a small sphere of what they do, but what is a good way to approach them to sell what I have to sell, which is events?
Show value. Look, most people fail before they walk in the door. They don't do their homework. They don't understand my needs. They don't understand what I'm doing. They come in bringing me just the wrong logo. They start off right off the bat saying, hey, let's have coffee. Well, I do drink coffee, but don't waste my time drinking coffee. Tell me what you're going to do for me. So it's getting really, really distinct about what the unique selling proposition is. So what's the value? And if you show me that you understand my business, I get it. And, I used to have people call to me that were selling to me Benjamin all the time, and they would say, Jeff, I'd like to meet with you and show you how I can help you save hundreds of dollars. What are you, freaking nuts? Hundreds of dollars? You just cost me hundreds of dollars just sending me that freaking email. So what do you have that's going to help me save millions of dollars? And the guy said, well, I can do that. It's just adding zeros. Fantastic. Now show me specifically what experience that you have in my industry that makes me believe that you can pull that off. Or don't even take the industry. Give me the subset based upon the things that I have to do, and it applies to a different industry. I can make that connection. And usually they would never call me back. So, and I'm not trying to be a hard ass or anything else. I'm just saying, look, I got this much time. I have to make decisions that affect billions of dollars, thousands and tens of thousands of employees, millions of customers. What is it that you can do for me that I can't do that's going to help me have a greater impact on that? I'm in. I'll pay. Here's the checkbook. But you have to be able to do that. And most people don't do their homework. So one, I encourage you to do your homework, get it down, and then be very clear about this, about the value that you present. And by the way, don't waste your time. In fact, we should do another one of these, Doug, on how to sell to the C-suite, right?
I love that.
The different personalities, because there's drivers, there's analyticals, there's expressives, there's amiables, and each of those have different types of ways that you would approach them and different types of closes that you would use and different ways you would approach. But I'm a driver. So for me, it's about give me the 1-2 choices, let me pick, get clear on that, and then let me, either seduce you or kill you, either way.
Cool. Thank you. That was great.
And Ben, while I'm doing some self-serving here, just so you know how to sell to the suites, C-Suite is available on GenieCast if you'd like to purchase it for your organization only. But on that note, Jeffrey, we're literally at 3 minutes. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate getting to talk with you. Is there anything, closing out, that you would want to leave our audience both here in our live virtual as well as on Facebook Live? Any notes, anything that if they're going to take away, how do you not become the next Kodak story?
It's just really a philosophy about adapt, change, or die. It's not the lucky who win, it's the relentless. So it's a relentless pursuit of being better all the time and being in that constant state of awareness of I'm not aware of what I'm aware of. And so how can I get better? What can I do better? How can I do my job better? How can I serve the people that I'm serving better? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better grandfather? How can I be a better human being? And I think if we kind of adopt that, we're a lot better off.
Love it. On that note, I think you need to get back to your wife and be a better grandfather and comment on those photos.
He keeps calling me, so I got to
Jeffrey Hayzlett, thank you so much for your time. Folks in the audience, thank you. On behalf of all of us here, I just want to thank you for participating. We'll catch you on the next cast.